Imagine waking up to a world where the United States is no longer the dominant global power. It's a cold evening in Moscow. The year is 2023. In the heart of the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin sits across from Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The room is grand, lined with gold and red, a setting fit for world-changing discussions. After hours of negotiation, they stand up, shake hands, and sign a document. The words on the paper send shockwaves across the world, a no-limits partnership between Russia and China. At that moment, the balance of global power shifts. What does this mean for the rest of the world? Is this the beginning of a new era? One where the US and the West are no longer in control? Let's break it down. An unlikely friendship. For decades, Russia and China were rivals, wary of each other's ambitions. But today they stand closer than ever. Why? Because the world around them has changed. Russia, crippled by Western sanctions, needs an economic lifeline. China, facing growing US opposition, needs a strategic partner. Both nations share a common goal: challenging Western dominance. This partnership isn't just about diplomacy, it's a realignment of global power. And whether you realize it or not, this will impact you, your country, and the future of international relations. The challenge: a shifting global order. To understand why this alliance matters, let's look at three major areas where the world is changing. Imagine a bustling port in Shanghai, containers stacked high, ships sailing out to sea. Many of them are filled with Russian oil and gas, a lifeline for Moscow after being cut off by the West. Trade between Russia and China has skyrocketed, growing over 60% in just 2 years. They're no longer relying on US dollars. Instead, they're using the Chinese yuan and Russian ruble. Why does this matter? Because if more countries follow their lead, the US dollar could lose its dominance, shifting economic power toward Beijing and Moscow. In the South China Sea, Chinese warships move alongside Russian submarines. A joint military exercise is underway, one of many recent war games between the two nations. The US and its allies watch closely. If these drills turn into real military cooperation, it could change the balance of power, especially in key conflict zones like Ukraine and Taiwan. At the United Nations, a critical vote is taking place. The United States and Europe push for stronger action against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But in the back row, Russia and China stand together, blocking the resolution. This is the new reality, a world where the United States doesn't always get its way. How did we get here? To understand where this alliance is going, we need to look at where it began. The Cold War, friends to enemies. In the 1950s, Moscow and Beijing were communist allies standing against the West. But by the 1960s, cracks began to show. Border conflicts and ideological differences led to a bitter split. For decades, China and Russia kept their distance, until one major event changed everything. 2014, Russia turns to China. It's 2014, Russia invades Crimea. The West responds with sanctions, isolating Moscow from global markets. Desperate for support, Russia turns to China, and China is ready. Chinese banks help Russia bypass sanctions. China buys Russian oil at a discount. Both nations agree to conduct trade in their own currencies. This was the moment that set the stage for their growing alliance. 2022, war brings them closer. When Russia invades Ukraine in 2022, the West hits harder than ever. Sanctions cut Moscow off from financial systems. European nations stop buying Russian oil, and once again China steps in, this time on a much bigger scale. By 2023, trade between Russia and China hits a record $240 billion. They sign the historic No Limits Agreement, deepening their cooperation in energy, military, and technology. At this point, it's clear Russia and China aren't just partners, they're allies against the West. The No Limits Agreement. Picture a high-security meeting room in Beijing. Putin and Xi Jinping sit across from each other, their teams behind them. They sign a deal that will shape global politics, more trade, less reliance on the West, deeper military cooperation, technology sharing in AI and cybersecurity. For China, this means securing vital energy resources and a powerful ally against the US. For Russia, it means economic survival and a chance to push back against NATO. But for the world, it signals something bigger, the rise of a new global power bloc. What happens next? The world is watching. Governments, investors, and military leaders are asking the same question. Where is this alliance heading? A new economic order. If more nations follow Russia and China in ditching the US dollar, global finance could shift toward a China-led system. The yuan replaces the dollar in key markets. Countries under US sanctions find a new financial safe haven. The West's ability to punish bad actors weakens. If China starts supplying weapons to Russia in Ukraine, the war could escalate. If Russia supports China in a Taiwan conflict, the US and its allies may be forced to intervene. The world could see a new Cold War, or worse, a direct military conflict. We may be heading toward a world with two competing alliances, the US, Europe, and their allies, and Russia, China, and their growing sphere of influence. For smaller nations, this means choosing sides, or playing both against each other. What this means for you. The Russia-China alliance isn't just about two countries, it's about the future of global power. Will the West adapt, or will its influence fade? Will a new economic system replace the US dollar? And could this partnership lead to war? These aren't just questions for politicians. They affect global markets, technology, and even the cost of living. Call to action. Now I want to hear from you. Is this alliance a necessary counterbalance to the West, or a growing global threat? Let's debate in the comments. If you found this video insightful, hit like, subscribe, and check out my other videos on global affairs. The world is changing, stay informed. See you next time.